One of the things I've started really sort of following is Conservative Home. Now, I'm not becoming a conservative, don't worry about it. But why am I sort of following this? Because it is good, as I've said, to have multiple viewpoints. And Conservative Home, very, very much, is sort of the almost center point of the average conservative voter. It does a lot of reach out to them. They have a lot of interviews with sort of local conservatives. They cover a lot of sort of local conservative races that aren't really covered in the more national news. So it is really good to sort of nip in on them every so often to see what the sort of conservative view on thing is. And I think this one is sort of quite interesting because whenever we've seen Nigel Farage talk of a comeback or sort of when we've sort of covered it, it's always been sort of seen as from the view as someone who is, on my side, sort of on the left. So it is actually interesting to sort of see this covered from the right side of things. What does the right, what does sort of the conservative home base actually think of a potential comeback of Nigel Farage? Because this isn't the first time Nigel has talked up a comeback. He came back, of course, with the Brexit Party, the Reform Party that is still there, could be maybe his vehicle. Maybe he's talking about coming back with a new one. I certainly think that the immigration issue that I've talked about before, worrying potentially could be a bigger, or at least the Tories could try and make a big electoral issue, certainly the next general election, is maybe a possibility that maybe he could ride back into the public eye with. But we'll have to see, because Farage has been always a very one issue politician. And obviously his one issue was obviously, being anti the EU. And now that has gone, he has really struggled to sort of find that new niche. So could this be finally the time that maybe, Farage makes his third comeback and, as they say, third time lucky, or as we hope, third time unlucky? So I don't know. But like I say, we're going to go have a look in the stage because I think this is a very, very sort of interesting sort of point of view and something that we've never really covered from, certainly going from at this angle. So, as we've always said before, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. So, this comes from Conservative Home with the title of Farage talks of another comeback, but he's not well positioned to strike where the Tories are weakest. How worried should the Conservatives be about new polling which suggests that up to a quarter of voters would consider supporting a new party led by Nigel Farage? According to the Daily Telegraph, a new poll shows that 12% of the public would be very interested in backing a new venture if it were to be launched next year, with about 16% would be quite interested. Meanwhile, one poll recently showed Reform UK, a potential Farage vehicle which already exists, gathering 8%, although it is quite a long way from sustained patterns. But then, a right-wing challenger party wouldn't necessarily need to get anything like 8% of the vote to do huge damage to the Tories. Any serious threat could just tip the balance in favour for Labour or the Liberal Democrats in key races on election night. But it would also restrict Rishi Sunak's room for political manoeuvring beforehand, making it harder for him to shore up the blue wall and the Conservatives' liberal flank. So you notice that he doesn't talk about the red wall. But that's a very sort of interesting admission that certainly this is one of the things I've sort of really taken sort of an interest in one of the reasons why I've taken interest in this is that I've noticed a lot of the writers here really talk up about Sunak should really focus on the blue wall, and they don't even talk about the red wall. And I think this is a very interesting admission, certainly from a group and certainly from a publication that is almost directly centered as being like the focal home point of like modern conservatism in the UK, that they are practically giving up the red wall. The election hasn't even been called or even happened yet, and already you're seeing writers just write off the red wall completely. It's very, very fascinating to see that. Very, very fascinating indeed. But anyway, back to it. So at the outer edges of possibility lurks the spectre of the Canadian general election of 1994, when the rise of the Reform Party, on top of a sundry of accumulated woes, saw the once dominant progressive Conservatives plunge from 156 seats to 2. Kim Campbell, the incumbent Prime Minister, lost her seat. That's certainly the Faragist fantasy. But to pull off such a heist, you would need to be in the right political place. And so far, it's far from obvious that the well-established dissidents on the British right are anywhere near it. Even delivering a successful insurgency that delivered Brexit, there was a gulf between the movement's intellectual organisers and the leadership, and its support base in the country. Subsequent years of Conservative government have done little to actually bridge it. Whilst Boris Johnson grasped the nature of his problem with gestures towards a higher spending Toryism, he lacked the discipline to deliver on it. It seems unlikely that Jeremy Hunt will be gearing up to plunder the capital investment budget to protect the pensions, and will do so and will do much to try and win hearts in the red wall via austerity 2.0. Again, it's not really going to, most of this budget really isn't going to go down well in the red wall. It's really, really not. Austerity 2.0 isn't really going to do it. Even if Sunak does protect pensions, the sheer cutting of social services is going to do huge damage. So I'm really shocked that he doesn't acknowledge that, because that's certainly one big issue in the red wall, public services, that is a massive issue, because people are very, very well aware of how much, the Tories have cut away social services and public services for the last decade at least. They are very well aware. And Boris Johnson promised to reverse that. So if Jeremy Hunt does go into austerity 2.0 territory, doesn't matter that he does he plunders the capital investment. It doesn't matter, because people will see that he has cut public services. And even among Conservatives, there is a desire for better, higher public services, and the understanding that we have to pay more for it. So, like I say, we'll see what happens when the budget gets announced. But trust me, there is going to be a lot of worried Tories on Friday. That is for certain. And certainly after the weekend, where polling is done and sort of comes out on Monday, even more worried Tories. Absolutely certainty for that. But anyway, we'll come back to this. So, combine that with the constant failure to actually get a grip on channel crossings, policing, and other home office failures. It does look like there is a space on the right for a party prepared to go hard on law and order, border security, and a red wall friendly approach to public spending and investment. Happily for the Tories, there is no sign of such a party, as this report was a recent political meeting nicely illustrates. The established leaders of a distant right, if there isn't a contradiction in terms, are out of step with the new mood. Richard Trice's Reform Party offers a very ill-judged mix of warmed-up leftover Thatcherism and self-serving Lib Dem-style constitutional reform talk. Farage is much better at playing to the gallery, but his instincts are much the same. And so the space identified by the great sage Jimmy Driver as love our NHS and hang the, I can't even say that on YouTube, will remain vacant for now. If Sunak and Hunt can somehow turn the Conservatives' fortunes around over the next year or two, the party may well have a cause to be extremely thankful for that at the next election. And I really don't think he can. I think this is going to be really hard. I think even Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt know the tightrope they are walking. We've already, had our video earlier today that Rishi Sunak cannot hold both. He cannot hold both the red and the blue wall, because if he focuses on the blue wall, he loses the red wall. If he focuses on the red wall, he loses the blue wall. And if he tries to walk this tightrope, he could very, very well risk losing them both. We've already seen projections of a huge potential Tory collapse, going down to just 104 seats. That is a massive loss for the Tories. That would be a massive landslide, because again, if you remember when we looked at it, I think the Labour were predicting like 430 something, which would be a massive landslide for Labour if that happened. So it's very, very interesting that you see here that the Conservatives think, for at least the time being, they are safe from a potential right-wing disenchantment candidate. But as they say never. You don't know that Farage might start talking with some new people and say, well, actually, guy, you need to start maybe taking this approach. Maybe you need to start taking this angle with it. Or maybe someone new comes along. Maybe, there's a Tory MP sitting on the Tory backbenches who becomes really disillusioned and then goes off and maybe starts his own, right-wing splinter Conservative Party. We've talked before about potentially the Conservative Party generally actually splintering in two. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that is where it could come from. But in the next 2 years, and certainly this budget, this is easily the biggest challenge, because I guarantee you, whatever Jeremy Hunt comes out with on Thursday is not going to go down well in the red wall. That is absolutely for certain. And even Rishi Sunak is himself a hard sell in the red wall. And that isn't even before you start talking about the Conservative policies that he would push. So, yeah, they've got a lot of hard work to do. But I'll tell you now, none of it is going to work in the red wall. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.